Welcome to this in-depth explainer. If you're managing global supply chains right now, you already know the game has fundamentally changed. Today, we're taking a strictly pragmatic, professional procurement perspective on securing compliant, high-quality, sustainable packaging in China for 2026. We're going to break down exactly who the top players are, what specific materials they excel in, and what certifications you absolutely must verify. So, let's dive right in. We are in the middle of a massive shift in today's sourcing landscape. We're totally moving away from eco-friendly packaging being just a nice-to-have brand flex. With tightening plastic use directives rolling out aggressively across the EU and North America, sustainable packaging is now a mandatory requirement for market access. You really have to adapt, and you have to do it with precision. And honestly, this right here is the real challenge for procurement teams heading into 2026. You've got to look past the marketing fluff. When you're looking at Chinese manufacturing clusters to fulfill these new regulatory demands, you have to be able to instantly tell the difference between a trading company that just slapped a green leaf logo on their website and a legitimate factory with verifiable material science capabilities and real certified environmental credentials. Think of this executive briefing as your ultimate buyer's blueprint. We'll be covering 2026 trends, defining the core materials, comparing the pros and cons of 7 Vanguard suppliers, and finally unpacking true costs and supplier auditing. Let's start with Part 1, 2026 Eco-Packaging Trends. Looking at the current state of the manufacturing landscape in key clusters like Guangdong, Zhejiang, and Fujian, the absolute most crucial takeaway is that eco-friendly is no longer just some generic buzzword. You can't just buy a brown box and call it sustainable anymore. It is now legally defined by precise chemical standards and strict end-of-life metrics. The factories winning today's contracts are the ones making the serious leap from basic plastics into advanced material science. Moving on to Part 2, Core Materials and Certifications. Before we even review the factories themselves, we've got to establish the core materials. Because if you don't know your materials, you simply can't vet your suppliers. You have to prioritize these 3 categories for compliance. First, molded fiber, like sugarcane bagasse or bamboo pulp. Second, compostable flexible packaging, made from PLA and PBAT blends. And third, FSC-certified paperboard. Whether you need plastic-free electronics inserts or high-end luxury retail boxes, understanding these 3 categories is the absolute foundation of your entire sourcing strategy. Which brings us to Part 3, our comprehensive 7-supplier comparison. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Notice how we are mapping specific B2B procurement needs directly to a supplier's distinct material expertise and certifications. For electronics, you're looking at Zbin for molded fiber. For global fashion, ZealX provides incredible integrated recycled and FSC solutions. And for high-barrier food packaging, MST Packaging completely dominates with their PLA blends. Let's look a bit closer at the specific pros and cons of these leaders. Let's kick things off with Zbin EP Tech. Their primary advantage is their high-end plant fiber engineering. Zbin is fantastic because their highly consistent automated lines are absolutely perfect for consumer electronics, really supporting the circular economy compared to standard bioplastics. But putting our procurement hats on, the drawback here is cost. You should expect higher tooling costs for those custom molds. It's a premium investment, but it's for high-end consistency. Next up, MST Packaging. If you are sourcing food-grade items, MST's major advantage is their massive investment in compostable barrier technologies. Getting a high oxygen barrier in a compostable bag is notoriously difficult to pull off, and they have completely nailed it, literally down to compostable valves. However, the critical sourcing requirement here is compliance. You must always remember to request their migration test reports to absolutely guarantee food safety. Mapping out the rest of our Vanguard suppliers, we've got XF Packaging focusing heavily on the aesthetic side of FSC special paper for luxury items. Then you have Sunshine Packaging dominating high-volume corrugated structures. Greenwing really excels in one-stop biodegradable retail solutions under strict EN 1343 standards. And finally, Sinhei Yuan provides highly technical custom paper tubes. This contrast highlights exactly why you have to source by capability and really weigh the pros and cons of a factory scale. Sunshine's massive advantage is volume. Their production efficiency keeps unit prices highly competitive for huge 100,000-plus unit runs, which structurally reduces your overpackaging. But if you're a mid-sized brand, their minimums might just be too high for you. That's where Xinhei steps in. Their big advantage is highly accessible MOQs for unique, shelf-ready shapes, making them your absolute go-to for boutique lines.
All right, part 4, true procurement cost considerations.
Because as much as we all love sustainability, going green absolutely impacts the bottom line. And as professional buyers, we have to account for that reality. The unavoidable fact is that eco-friendly packaging in 2026 still carries a price premium of 10 to 25% over traditional petroleum-based plastics. It is so vital to model this into your financial projections right from the start.
So, why exactly does that premium exist? Well, it comes down to three hidden drivers pushing your unit costs up. First, materials like PLA and PBAT fluctuate wildly in price compared to standard petroleum resins. Second, manufacturing processes, like the drying cycles for molded fiber, are inherently slower than just blasting hot plastic into a mold. And third, maintaining legitimate certifications like FSC or BPI cost the factory real money, which, you guessed it, they ultimately pass down to the buyer.
So, how do we actually fight back against those premiums? Professional sourcing teams implement a strategy called right sizing. You mitigate a 20% material price increase by structurally reducing the actual material volume by 20%. A cleverly engineered, smaller eco box from a supplier like Sunshine or Z-Ben is very often cheaper to make and cheaper to ship than a large, wasteful plastic one. Which leads us to our final section, Part 5. Supplier verification and auditing. Because look, trust is great, but auditing is definitely better. Here's your actionable playbook. If you're onboarding any of the 7 Vanguard suppliers we just talked about, you absolutely must follow this 4-step audit workflow to ensure their claims hold up. Step 1, do not just look at an FSC logo. Look up the actual license code on the public database. Step 2, demand and order specific transaction certificate. Step 3, request older samples to physically test for degradation. And step 4, check the inks. A green box is entirely useless if it's covered in heavy metal inks or synthetic glues. Now, your sustainable procurement strategy doesn't just end when the product leaves the factory in China. It extends all the way through your global logistics chain, and this is exactly where so many buyers get caught completely off guard. You have to ask yourself, will your new compostable packaging melt in a hot warehouse? The reality is, true compostable PLA and PBAT bags are designed to break down. That's exactly what they are supposed to do. But it means they lose structural integrity in high heat and high humidity, giving them a very strict shelf life of about 10 to 14 months. Understanding this critical material limitation ensures you don't end up with a warehouse full of melted, unsellable products. So, considering everything we've unpacked today, how will you adapt your 2026 supply chain storage to survive this new reality? It's definitely something crucial to think about as you start reaching out to these suppliers.